You pretended to be someone you weren't again today. I did too. We woke up, we checked ourselves in the mirror, and we put on the face we thought the world needed to see. It wasn't a lie exactly, but it wasn't the whole truth either. And here's what makes it worse. We've done it so many times that we've started to believe that face is who we actually are. We've confused the mask with the face beneath it. And somewhere deep in the psyche, something knows the difference. Something is keeping score. This isn't about inauthenticity in the way we usually talk about it. This is about something far more fundamental. Something Carl Jung spent his entire life trying to help us see. We don't just have one personality. We have multiple centers of psychological energy, multiple patterns that constellate in the psyche, pulling us in different directions, making different demands. Jung called these patterns archetypes, and they're not metaphors. They're not symbols you can take or leave. They're the fundamental structures of the human psyche, as real as the organs in your body, and just as consequential when they malfunction. Before the end of this video, we're going to explore 4 specific archetypes that are operating in your life right now, whether you're aware of them or not. And more importantly, what changes when you finally become conscious of their influence. Because here's the truth Jung discovered. You cannot improve your life by adding more to it. You improve your life by becoming aware of what's already running the show. Welcome to Deep Psyche Lab. I'm here to guide you through the deeper territories of the psyche, where psychology meets meaning, where theory meets lived experience. If you're new here, this channel exists to make depth psychology accessible without diluting it, to explore the ideas that actually change how you experience being alive. Subscribe and hit the notification bell because we go deep, and these explorations don't fit into sound bites. Let's begin where Jung himself began, with a crisis of identity that led him to a revolutionary insight about human consciousness. In 1913, Carl Jung experienced what he later called his confrontation with the unconscious, a period of psychological disintegration that would either destroy him or transform everything he understood about the human mind. He was 38 years old, internationally respected, professionally successful, and he could feel his own psyche coming apart at the seams. He began to see visions, hear voices, experience waking dreams that terrified him. Most people in his position would have tried to suppress these experiences, to push them back down into unconsciousness. Jung did something different. He watched. He recorded. He engaged with what was emerging. What he discovered during those years changed psychology forever. He found that the psyche wasn't a blank slate shaped only by personal experience. It had structure. It had patterns that repeated across cultures, across centuries, across the entire human species. These patterns, these archetypes, weren't learned. They were inherited, embedded in what Jung called the collective unconscious. And they were operating in every human being who had ever lived, including you, right now as you watch this. The word archetype comes from the Greek archetypon, meaning original pattern or model. Jung didn't invent the concept. Plato talked about eternal forms. Philosophers have long recognized universal human patterns. But Jung was the first to ground it in the structure of the psyche itself. An archetype isn't a specific image or character. It's a potential for experience, a pattern of psychological energy that constellates around fundamental human situations: birth, death, power, love, transformation. These situations recur throughout human life, and the psyche has evolved response patterns to them, patterns we call archetypes. Think of it this way. You don't have to teach a baby to suck, to cry when distressed, to smile at faces. These are hardwired responses. Archetypes work the same way in the psychological realm. You don't have to teach someone what a hero is. Every culture has heroes, and the stories follow remarkably similar patterns. You don't have to teach someone to project power onto authority figures. It happens automatically because the psyche contains an archetype of the wise elder, the powerful parent, the divine king. These patterns shape perception before conscious thought enters the picture. But here's where it gets uncomfortable. The archetypes don't care about your ego's preferences. They don't care about what you think you should be or how you want to be seen. They operate according to their own logic, their own needs, their own trajectories. And when you're unconscious of them, when you don't know they're running in the background, they control you. You think you're making choices, but you're acting out patterns that are thousands of years old. Jung identified dozens of archetypal patterns, but 4 of them are so fundamental that every person alive is navigating their influence. These 4 archetypes form the basic structure of psychological development. They represent the masks we wear, the shadows we cast, the journeys we undertake, and the wholeness we seek. To become conscious of them is to step out of their automatic control and into genuine psychological freedom. The first archetype you must understand is the persona, and you've already met it this morning. The persona is the face you show the world, the social mask you wear to navigate the demands of collective life. The word comes from Latin, meaning the mask worn by actors in ancient theater. And that etymology tells you everything you need to know. You are playing a role, and you're so good at it that you've forgotten you're acting. The persona develops out of necessity. You cannot function in society as a completely unfiltered expression of your inner chaos. A 3-year-old does this. Pure-eyed, pure impulse, no mediation, and we call it a tantrum. The development of a persona is a sign of maturity, of social intelligence, of adaptation. At work, you speak differently than you do with your closest friend. With your parents, different still. With strangers, another adjustment. These are personas, and there's nothing wrong with having them. The problem comes when you identify with them, when you start to believe the mask is your face. Jung noticed this everywhere in his clinical practice. People came to him in crisis, and when he began to explore, he'd find that they'd spent decades building a persona that the world rewarded. The successful executive, the devoted parent, the selfless caregiver, the strong protector, and somewhere along the way, they'd lost contact with the person beneath the role. They'd optimized the performance and abandoned the performer, and then something happens. The kids leave home, the career peaks and loses meaning, the relationship ends, the body starts to fail. The persona cracks. And underneath, they find a stranger. This is one of the most common crises of midlife, though it can happen at any age. You wake up one day and realize you don't know who you are without your roles. You don't know what you want when no one's watching. You don't know what brings you joy when there's no one to perform for. The persona has become a prison, and you've been living in it so long, you've forgotten there's an outside. The key insight Jung offers here is simple but profound. The persona is necessary, but it's not you. It's a tool, a bridge between your inner world and outer reality. A healthy relationship with the persona means you can put it on and take it off consciously. You know when you're playing a role, and you know it's a role. You don't come home from work and keep performing competence. You don't go to dinner with friends and maintain the caregiver mask when what you need is to be cared for. You allow the persona to serve its function without letting it consume your identity. But here's where it gets tricky. The persona isn't arbitrary. It's built from the parts of yourself that the world around you rewarded. Your family, your culture, your historical moment, all of these shaped which qualities you emphasized and which you suppressed. If you grew up in a household where anger was dangerous, you built a persona of calmness, agreeability, non-confrontation. If you grew up where vulnerability was weakness, you built a persona of strength, control, imperviousness. The persona is tailored to survival in your specific environment, which means the persona necessarily excludes something. And that excluded material doesn't disappear. It goes into the second archetype we need to understand, the shadow. The shadow is everything you are that you don't want to be. It's the repository of rejected experience, suppressed impulses, denied qualities, forbidden desires. It's made of the same psychological energy as the persona, but it contains what the persona had to banish in order to function. If your persona is the saint, your shadow holds the sinner. If your persona is the strong one, your shadow holds the vulnerability. If your persona is the rational adult, your shadow holds the wild, irrational, primal energies you've been trying to transcend since adolescence. Jung was clear about this. The shadow isn't evil. It's unconscious. It contains negative qualities, yes, your capacity for cruelty, for selfishness, for destruction, but it also contains tremendous vitality, creativity, authenticity, and power. Everything you needed to suppress in order to be acceptable gets thrown into the shadow, and that includes both your darkness and your light. The parts of you that were too much, too intense, too alive, they're in the shadow too, waiting. Here's how you know you're encountering your shadow. You have a disproportionate emotional reaction to something or someone. You meet a person at a party, and within minutes you intensely dislike them, even though they haven't done anything wrong. They're just Something about them bothers you. That's projection. You're seeing your own shadow material in them, or you're watching a movie, and a character does something that fills you with moral outrage, and you spend the next hour explaining to everyone why that behavior is unacceptable. That intensity, that heat, that's the shadow speaking. We don't get that activated by qualities we've integrated. We get activated by qualities we've disowned. Jung had a phrase for this. Everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is. The shadow grows in the dark. The more you insist you are only one kind of person, only kind, only rational, only selfless, the more monstrous the shadow becomes, because you're feeding it everything that contradicts your conscious self-image, and that material builds up pressure. It wants expression. It will find expression one way or another. This is why good people do terrible things. This is why the devoted spouse has the affair, why the honest person steals, why the gentle person explodes in rage. The shadow doesn't disappear because you ignore it. It waits for a moment of weakness, a crisis, an opportunity, and then it acts. And because you haven't integrated it, you don't see it coming. You genuinely surprise yourself. You say, I don't know what came over me. But Jung knew. Your shadow came over you. The part you've been denying finally demanded its due. The work with the shadow isn't to eliminate it. That's impossible and undesirable. The work is to become conscious of it, to turn and face the parts of yourself you've been fleeing. This is terrifying. It means admitting you contain qualities you've spent your life condemning in others. It means recognizing that you're not the person you pretend to be, not even close. But it also means reclaiming energy, vitality, authenticity. It means you can stop projecting your inner darkness onto the world and start taking responsibility for your own psyche. And here's the paradox Jung discovered. When you integrate the shadow, you don't become worse. You become more whole. The cruelty you were capable of doesn't disappear, but it comes under conscious control. The selfishness doesn't vanish, but it transforms into healthy self-interest. The rage doesn't evaporate, but it becomes access to appropriate aggression, to boundary setting, to the ability to say no. The shadow contains everything you need that your persona excluded. To reclaim it is to reclaim yourself. But there's a deeper layer we haven't touched yet. Because while you're busy managing your persona and wrestling with your shadow, there's a third archetype at work. One that's trying to move you forward, trying to get you to grow, even when growth is the last thing you want. If you're finding this exploration valuable, if this perspective on the psyche is resonating with something you've sensed but couldn't articulate, take a moment and hit the like button. It helps this content reach others who are ready for this depth. The third archetype is the hero, and you've been living this story since you were born, whether you know it or not. The hero isn't about capes and superpowers. It's about the fundamental pattern of psychological development, the process of separating from the unconscious, establishing an ego, facing challenges, and growing through the confrontation with obstacles. Every single person follows this arc. You are the hero of your own journey, and the journey isn't optional. Jung drew heavily on mythology to understand this pattern. Joseph Campbell later expanded it into the monomyth, The Hero's Journey, but Jung saw it first in his work with patients. The hero always begins in a state of innocence or ignorance, unconscious of the challenges ahead. There's a call to adventure, a summons to leave the familiar. There's resistance, the refusal of the call, the desire to stay comfortable. Eventually, circumstances force the departure. The hero enters unknown territory. There are trials, enemies, allies, lessons. There's a descent into the underworld, a confrontation with death or dissolution. And if the hero survives, there's a return, bringing new wisdom, new gifts back to the community. This is your life. You don't choose whether to be a hero. You only choose whether to be a conscious one. Every transition you face, leaving home, starting a career, entering a relationship, becoming a parent, facing illness, confronting loss, every single one of these is a hero's journey. The psyche is trying to develop, and it uses challenges to force that development. The comfortable life, the life without struggle, isn't a blessed life in Jungian terms. It's a life where the psyche is atrophying, where the hero archetype is dormant, where development has stalled. Think about the moments in your life when you really grew. They weren't the easy moments. They weren't the times when everything went according to plan. They were the crises, the failures, the losses, the moments when your old way of being no longer worked and you had to find a new one. That's the hero archetype in action. It's the part of you that says, I will face this. I will move through this. I will become someone who can handle this. But here's what most people miss. The hero's ultimate task isn't external conquest. It's not about slaying the dragon in the outer world. The dragon is internal. The hero's task is to develop consciousness, to differentiate from the unconscious, to claim your own authority. Jung called this individuation, the process of becoming who you actually are, as opposed to who your family, your culture, your conditioning told you to be. The hero archetype is what drives you to leave the safe harbor of collective thinking and venture into your own unique path. It's what gives you the courage to disagree with your parents, to leave a career that doesn't fit, to end a relationship that's stifling you, to pursue work that matters even when it's not lucrative. The hero says, I will not live someone else's life. I will not die having never been myself. And this is where the hero archetype connects with everything we've discussed so far. The hero's journey requires you to see through your persona, to recognize it as a mask and ask what's beneath it. The hero's journey requires you to confront your shadow, because the dragon you're fleeing is always a projection of your own darkness. You cannot complete the journey without facing what you've been avoiding. The external adventure is always a mirror for the internal work. In myth, the hero often receives help from mentors, magical objects, allies who appear at the right moment. In psychological terms, these are symbols of the deeper resources of the psyche. When you're facing something that feels impossible, something in you knows more than your ego knows. There's wisdom available from the unconscious, if you know how to listen. Dreams give guidance. Synchronicities point the way. Intuitions arise that you can't explain rationally, but that proved to be exactly right. This is the psyche supporting the hero's journey, but not every hero makes it home. Some get stuck in the underworld. Some win the treasure but refuse to return. Some bring back the gift but find that no one wants it. The hero's journey has 1,000 variations, and failure is always possible. This is why consciousness matters. When you know you're on a hero's journey, when you recognize the archetypal pattern, you can navigate it more skillfully. You know that the dark night you're in has a purpose. You know that the resistance you feel is part of the process. You know that the ordeal has meaning. And you know something else too. The hero's journey isn't the end. It's a stage, because there's a fourth archetype operating behind all of this. Pulling the strings, orchestrating your development towards something your ego can barely comprehend. The self, Jung's most mysterious and profound archetype. Not the self with a lowercase s. Not your personal identity. Your ego, your sense of I. The self with a capital S. The archetype of wholeness. The organizing principle of the psyche. The totality of consciousness and unconsciousness integrated into a unified field. In religious language, this is the image of God in the human soul. In psychological language, this is the telos of individuation, the goal the psyche is moving toward, whether you cooperate or not. Here's where Jung diverges radically from Freud and from most Western psychology. Freud saw the psyche as fundamentally conflicted, with the ego trying to manage the demands of the ID and the superego, engaged in a perpetual struggle with no resolution. Jung saw something different. He saw that beneath the chaos, beneath the conflicts, there was an organizing intelligence. The psyche wasn't random. It had direction. It was trying to become whole. The self is the archetype of this wholeness. It's not something you create or achieve through willpower. It's already there from the beginning as a potential. Your ego, your conscious sense of I, is just one small part of the total psyche. The self encompasses everything: consciousness and unconsciousness, persona and shadow, masculine and feminine, individual and collective. It's the totality, and it's trying to integrate all these disparate parts into a coherent whole. Jung found symbols of the self in every spiritual tradition: mandalas, circles, crosses, sacred geometry. These appear spontaneously in the dreams and visions of people undergoing psychological transformation. They appear in religious art across cultures. They appear in children's drawings: the circle, the quaternity, the center. These are symbols of the self, the psyche's way of representing its own drive toward wholeness. But the self isn't experienced as an idea or a concept. It's experienced as a presence, a center of gravity that's distinct from the ego. Jung described his own encounter with the self as the most profound experience of his life. He felt a sense of being known, being held, being guided by something larger than his conscious personality. He realized his ego wasn't in charge. The ego was in service to something deeper. And when he aligned with that deeper reality, his life had meaning and direction. When he resisted it, he suffered. This is the insight that transforms everything. You are not the center of your psyche. Your ego, your conscious mind, the I you identify with, it's not running the show. The self is the center, and the ego is meant to be in dialogue with it, in service to it, listening to its promptings and following its lead. This is what Jung meant by individuation. It's not about strengthening the ego, making it more powerful, more in control. It's about relativizing the ego, putting it in right relationship with the self, allowing the deeper wisdom of the psyche to guide your life. How do you know when the self is speaking? You know because it feels different from ego desires. The ego wants comfort, security, status, pleasure, the avoidance of pain. The self wants growth, wholeness, truth, meaning, even if it costs you everything. The ego wants to stay in the familiar. The self sends you on the hero's journey, into the unknown, toward transformation. The ego wants to maintain the persona. The self forces you to confront the shadow. The ego wants to be special. The self wants you to be real. Jung spent the last decades of his life trying to understand the relationship between the ego and the self, and he concluded that this relationship is the fundamental task of the second half of life. In the first half, you build an ego. You develop competence, establish identity, create a life in the world. This is necessary, but somewhere around midlife the psyche shifts. The goals that drove you start to feel hollow. The achievements that once mattered lose their luster. Something in you starts asking different questions. Not how can I succeed, but what does my life mean? Not how can I be happy, but who am I really? This is the self asserting itself, calling the ego into a new relationship. And this is where all four archetypes come together. The persona must be seen through, recognized as a necessary tool but not your identity. The shadow must be confronted and integrated, its energy reclaimed, its wisdom acknowledged. The hero's journey must be undertaken consciously, not as an achievement, but as a process of becoming. And through all of this, the self is guiding, orchestrating, pulling you toward a wholeness you can barely imagine. Jung called this process individuation, and he was clear that it's not about becoming perfect. It's about becoming whole. Wholeness includes your darkness and your light, your strength and your weakness, your nobility and your pettiness. Wholeness means you stop trying to be only good, only strong, only rational. You embrace the full spectrum of what you are. You accept the tensions, the contradictions, the complexity. You become human in the deepest sense. This is why Jung said that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Not who you should be, not who others need you to be, not who your persona pretends you are. Who you actually are in your unique, irreplaceable particularity. The self knows who that is. Your ego doesn't. The work is to let the ego listen. So how do you actually work with these archetypes? How do you become conscious of patterns that operate below consciousness? Jung developed several practices, but they all share a common principle. You pay attention to what your psyche is already showing you. Start with the persona. Notice where you're performing. Notice when you're more concerned with how you appear than with what you're actually experiencing. Notice the exhaustion that comes from maintaining a mask for too long. And then experiment. What happens if you let the mask slip? Not in every situation, that would be chaos, but in safe spaces, with trusted people. What happens if you show what's underneath? The vulnerability, the uncertainty, the parts of yourself you usually edit out. You might be surprised. Often the parts we hide are the parts others find most relatable, most human, most real. With the shadow, pay attention to your projections. When you have a strong emotional reaction to someone, pause and ask, what quality am I seeing in them that I refuse to see in myself? This isn't to excuse bad behavior in others. Someone can genuinely be acting poorly, but the intensity of your reaction reveals something about your inner landscape. The things that bother you most are usually things you've exiled from your own self-concept. Reclaim them, not by acting them out, but by acknowledging, I contain this too. I have the capacity for this. With the hero archetype, recognize that you're on a journey. Every challenge is an invitation to grow, and resistance is part of the pattern. You don't have to like the ordeal you're facing, but you can choose to face it consciously, to ask what it's teaching you, to see it as part of your development, rather than as a meaningless obstacle. The hero's journey gives your struggles meaning. It transforms suffering from something senseless into something purposeful. And with the self, practice listening. The self speaks through dreams, through synchronicities, through moments of deep knowing that arise spontaneously. It speaks through your body, the tension in your chest when you're about to do something that violates your truth, the expansion you feel when something aligns with your deeper purpose. The self speaks through your longings, especially the longings that don't make practical sense. Why do you feel pulled toward that creative project no one asked for? Why does that particular landscape move you to tears? Why do you keep thinking about that conversation from 3 years ago? These aren't random. They're the self trying to get your attention. Jung used a practice called active imagination to dialogue with the unconscious. You sit quietly, you bring your attention inward, and you wait. An image arises, a figure, a scene. Instead of analyzing it, you engage with it. You talk to it. You ask it questions. You listen to what it says. This isn't fantasy. It's a disciplined method for accessing the deeper layers of the psyche, for hearing what the ego alone cannot know. You might find that a part of yourself speaks to you, the angry child you've been trying to outgrow, the wise elder you've been ignoring, the creative spirit you silenced for practicality. These are all aspects of the psyche trying to be heard. The self orchestrates these encounters. It brings up what needs to be integrated. When you're ready to integrate it, the timing matters. You cannot force this work. You cannot will yourself into wholeness. The psyche unfolds according to its own rhythm. Sometimes you're ready for a confrontation with your shadow. Sometimes you're not, and pushing it will only cause harm. The art of individuation is learning to sense what wants to emerge, what's ready to be worked with, what needs more time. This is why Jung always emphasized that individuation is a process, not a goal. You don't finish it, you engage with it, your entire life, becoming more conscious, more whole, more fully yourself. And here's what changes when you work with these archetypes consciously. You stop being surprised by yourself. You know you have a persona, so you're not shattered when it cracks. You know you have a shadow, so you're not as reactive when it projects onto others. You know you're on a hero's journey, so you meet challenges with more courage. You know the self is guiding you, so you trust the process even when it doesn't make sense. You become more spacious, more flexible, less defended, because you're not trying to be one kind of person anymore. You're allowing the full complexity of what you are to exist. You're not at war with yourself. You're negotiating with yourself, listening to different parts, honoring different needs, finding a way for it all to coexist. This is psychological freedom. Not the freedom to do whatever you want, but the freedom to be who you actually are. Not who your wounds made you, not who your conditioning shaped you to be, not who your fears keep you playing small, who yourself knows you can become. Jung believed that this work, this inner work of becoming conscious, wasn't just personal. It was the most important work anyone could do for the world, because an unconscious person projects their shadow outward, creates enemies, starts wars, causes harm, and doesn't even know they're doing it. A conscious person takes responsibility for their inner life, integrates their darkness, and stops adding to the collective chaos. If enough people did this work, Jung believed the world would transform. You cannot change the world by force of will, but you can change yourself. You can become conscious of the archetypes operating in you, and in becoming conscious, you free yourself from their automatic control. You reclaim your agency. You become the person you were always meant to be, the person the self has been trying to help you become since the moment you were born. The archetypes aren't your enemies. They're the structure of your psyche, the patterns that make you human. To understand them is to understand yourself at the deepest level. To work with them is to step into your own becoming, to say yes to the journey your life is asking you to take. This is the work. This is individuation. This is becoming whole. You don't have to be at war with the parts of yourself you don't understand. The persona isn't a lie. It's a necessary bridge. The shadow isn't evil. It's exiled potential. The hero isn't a fantasy. It's your actual development. The self isn't distant. It's the deepest truth of who you are. When you see this, when you really see this, everything shifts. You're no longer trying to become someone better. You're trying to become more fully who you already are, beneath all the layers, beneath all the conditioning, beneath all the fear. And that is how you improve your life. Not by adding more achievements, more strategies, more techniques, but by becoming conscious of what's already moving in the depths of your psyche. and choosing to work with it instead of against it. The archetypes have been waiting for you to notice them. They've been operating in the background of your entire life, shaping your choices, your relationships, your sense of meaning. Now you see them. Now you can work with them consciously. Now you can begin the real work of becoming. Here's what I want you to take from this. Consciousness is the gift you give yourself and everyone around you. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Share one archetype you recognize most strongly in your life right now and how it's showing up. Just one word or one sentence: persona, shadow, hero, or self. And what you're noticing. Your insights might be exactly what someone else needs to read today. This channel explores depth psychology for self-understanding and personal growth, and is not a substitute for professional therapy. Thank you for going this deep. If this exploration resonated with you, hit the like button and subscribe to Deep Psyche Lab for more journeys into the unconscious. Ring the notification bell so you don't miss when we dive into the next territory of the psyche. This work matters. Your inner life matters. And I'm honored to be on this journey with you. Until next time, keep paying attention.